Oops, I have all these pop-ups coming up. Okay. Well, I'm so excited to be doing this conversation with one of my dear friends, Liliana Baylon, and she is just such a phenomenal human. Um, she is trained in pretty much anything and everything, has been on the board of directors for EMDR, EFT, APT. Um, how many other millions of board seats
I
have
was
you had
like,
over the years?
let's not get the wrong impression. I
Right,
love
this number.
to pay it forward. Let's put it that way.
Okay. And you do a beautiful job of that, especially in, so Liliana specializes working with migrant families. And, and that, for this week's course, she would be an excellent resource for us and really talking about hands-on work in very diverse family settings and in the world of play therapy and some of the beautiful parts of this, some of the heartbreaking parts of this, and especially in our current climate and culture that we have. And so maybe I can turn the time over to you, Liliana, and kind of talk about like some of your experiences and like what's led you to this passion.
Yeah. So hello everyone. I will say that what lets me what actually moved forward to specifically talk about culture was I was othering. I migrated to this country. I knew I needed help, but I had to explain over and over again every time that I needed help. So that led me into the journey of how do I do this work and how do I help others understand how culture shows in our room, in our therapy room, specifically on our play therapy room. So when we think about culture in the US, we tend to think about ethnicity automatically. When in reality, culture, it's language, it's food, it's holidays, is relational, is emotional expression. It's about rules and power and safety. So it's not just about power dynamics, or it's not just about where you come from, um, or in our playroom, it's not just about what toys should we have. It's more than that. So in play therapy, culture is about how the child approaches the room, how quickly they engage, what is it that they avoid, or how they respond to us as the adults coming in and doing work with them. So that is, some of the stuff that we will be discussing. I think when we all take play therapy trainings, we hear over and over again, play therapy is nonverbal, and it is. But when we're talking about culture, we have to be aware that culture shapes language. And therefore, the child has no words about what they want to share with you, but they have an understanding on how to share this with you. So I specialize on working with migrant kids. And I say I specialize because there's no training for it. I wish there were, because I will be like taking them. So it's something that I've been accumulated over the years. But when we're talking about play therapy and cultural issues, we're talking about migration, not just thing from country to country, but it's any disruption, any transition that a child has to go and adjust. So I want you to think about if you move schools, if you move states, if you move, that is migration by itself. Okay. For the kids that I work with, it's about racism, it's about poverty, and colonization. So even though it's a word that we don't like to use because we feel very uncomfortable, and a lot of times it's because we don't understand it. Um, but it is in part of the work that I do, it's about displacement. So the nervous system of those kiddos when they come into the room is understandably they are in a state of dysregulation. They don't know what to share. They don't know what's a secret. They don't know if they're safe to share. They don't know what they can play with. They don't know if they should play with. They don't know, like, there's a lot of unknowns for the kiddos who you are working when it comes specifically to migration. But when we're talking about play therapy and cultural issues, you have to start thinking of all of this in regards to the playroom. So, and this is so that we can avoid um, what we might risk when it comes to mislabeling, because we don't understand culture and we go to pathology right away. So,
Can you speak, and I have some ideas brewing,
yeah,
but can you speak more to that explicitly? Like when you're talking about, we have to be careful about mislabeling and pathologizing,
yeah,
because that is part of our colonization. And this is pervasive in mental health across disciplines, across populations,
yeah,
because what we've done over time, right? I mean, we know that most mental health theories was developed by old white European men. And
yes,
so your perspective, your viewpoint, the way that you see the world is going to be influenced by that culture in which they're coming from and which has been passed down over and over and over across, decades and hundreds of years. And
yeah,
so we already have some of this mentality like embedded within our training programs, embedded within how we're seeing behaviors and how we pathologize other humans. And, you know, when we're thinking about migration, I mean, most children feel really overwhelmed by the playroom because the playroom in and of itself is its own culture within a broader culture, within a broader systemic culture.
yeah.
And that's going to be dictated by so much of not just the agency setting,
Mhm.
but by the play therapist who's running the show in that.
Yeah, I love that you named that, because if you are beginning your journey as a play therapist, you get so excited and you want to have all these toys and you want to display them because you're so proud of all the resources that you have. I was one of them.
Mhm.
And that's very overwhelming for a child who just migrated. So if the child that we're talking about is a newcomer, so someone who migrated within less than 5 years, and it's their first time coming to therapy. Imagine being a child and entering a room with so many choices. That is overwhelming for the child. So even the toys, what excites you about it, it's overwhelming already for the nervous system. Giving them too many choices is overwhelming. Not giving them choices is overwhelming. You as a play therapist deciding what model you're going to use may be overwhelming for the child. If you're using a model that says the child will lead you, well, if they come from a family culture that says, Nene, you have no voice, so therefore you will do as I say, that it's overwhelming for the child. It's incongruent for the child. And if you don't get to know the family, you may be working against the child. So the child may get in trouble as soon as they leave the room for something that you inviting them to do. So let's
And
pause
I
here.
most people would not even like, you wouldn't even think about that, right? Because again, we're like, oh, this is what you do. This is how you do play therapy. Like you get to be the boss in here.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times that sentence has come out of my mouth over the last 25 years. Um,
Yeah.
and not recognizing that you could potentially be causing harm,
Yeah. And it's,
or having that mismatch
there you
of
go.
like, oh, you can treat me differently as an adult, but everybody else you have to treat a different way. And
Yes.
what kind of messaging does this send to the child and to their parents and to the broader system?
Yes. So in that case, I'm hoping that we can discuss about how in your intake sessions, hopefully there, if you're using a translator, if language is an issue, or either way in the intake, you take time to get to know the family and ask questions. Some of my questions are we allowed to play and what play looks like in your family? Because I don't know what the child has been exposed to or is allowed to. Other thing that I do is I have a session, just a session where I take the caretakers to the playroom. And I said, the first question that I asked is, when you see this, what do you see? Which usually caretakers will tell me, well, just toys. And I was like, okay, I see interventions. I see tools to work with anxiety, to work with depression, to work with anger, to work with family dynamics. If you pick a toy, I can tell you the many ways that I can use that toy. So I just don't see toys. I see tools. The same way that you, when you enter a kitchen, see tools or ingredients. The same way that if you see a car, you see tools or something that you get to fix or something that, whatever we want to call it. If I go to like, and I can keep naming, right? If I go to a sports, if you like sports, like I keep using images and metaphors to link. What I do is not just play. What you see are not just toys. And when you come in, what is the story that you're telling yourself about what your child is going to be doing when they come to see me? So I'm setting so many, I guess I'm setting the room in order for me to learn what is your perspective, what is it that you know about play therapy. When you see this, is this overwhelming for you? And is sadness going to come up because you may not be able to provide toys the same way that I can have this setting for your child? Which in migration, most of the families do not have the luxury to say, I'm going to take all these toys with me. I'm not, there's a lot of reports now telling us that most of the families have seconds to decide what they carry with them. So it may be clothes, it may be identity stuff, but it may not, I'm sorry, not toys. It may be clothes, it may be like necessities. So toys is not in something that they carry. So then a lot of the times the caretakers that I work with, we do a little bit of grief work because they cannot afford to provide that space or those toys for their children. So culturally, right? Now we're talking about we are grieving so many things when we invite not only the client, which will be the child, but also the family.
I will never forget having a parent say to me, I can't compete with this. I can't compete with you. And that, like, oh, I just feel it in my heart even now where I'm like, oh, that's like so not what I'm, this is not like a competition with this, but with this family where they'd lost everything.
Yeah.
Uh, and then coming to my happy, cheerful play therapy room, like, yeah, we have all these things. It's gonna be so great. And and the parent feeling so defeated in that, even though it's like I purposely chose to bring you to therapy, I purposely chose to bring you to Claire. I knew what play therapy was, but stepping into the space, knowing everything that we lost
Yeah.
is so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And there's so much grief. And I think a lot of times when we're working with families, we forget about how vulnerable it is to invite the parent to come into the playroom. I
Yeah.
love how you introduced them in that first session. I do something similar, but I'm like, I've never thought about asking them, what do you see here? What tools do you see here? I've like done like, here, let me give you the tour. And we like, answer
Yeah.
questions, walk around. How does this feel comfortable? But I hadn't thought about looking at it through that lens before. So I really appreciate that. And I
Yeah.
think that this is something that way too often gets missed. In that crucial relationship building and rapport building with the parent. Uh,
Yeah.
and and if we can invite them in from the very beginning, even if they're not ready to come to therapy from the very beginning,
Yeah.
but there's that invitation in, it makes doing that relationship work and the healing that needs to happen so much easier because you've already built a doorway
Yes.
into the process.
That's exactly it. Right. And I wish I wish I can say like, oh my God, I'm so smart. But now, like I have taken family members as well to my office so that I can show them. And I saw adults getting sad right away,
Mm.
right? Because the lack of, or they didn't have a childhood due to this transition. So it brought me to, if I was a caretaker and if I come in, what would I see? So I started asking myself those questions. And that's when I switch. How I have to be so aware that it's not just, and you and I discuss this so much in the trainings that we do. It's not, the child is not the only client, it's the whole system. And how is it through an attachment lens that we're helping the system come together and communicate in a different way? Because the work that we do is not in solitude. It's not just the child getting well and then like everything is going to be okay. It's the whole system that joins this movement.
Right. And this is where that relationship building and that scaffolding of relationship building is so important because
Yeah.
especially when, I think when we're thinking about in terms of culture, and of course, in the predominant Western culture, we're looking at this as race. Like, do we look the same? Do we talk the same? Do we act the same? And
Yeah.
if we look different from each other, oh, we must have nothing in common.
Yeah.
And sometimes we make the mistake of like, oh, we look the same on the outside, so we have tons in common.
Yeah.
And neither one of those are true, right? They're both myths.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in every family that we're working with, it's so important that we're doing this relationship scaffolding so there's a therapeutic alliance.
Yeah.
And when there is a mix of cultural backgrounds happening from the therapist and the clients, you also want to be so careful
Mm-hmm.
and so curious and making sure that you're not mapping your lens of what you believe from what
Yeah.
your background has informed you as
Yeah.
is the right way,
Yeah.
right? You're inviting in while also being very careful not to put your clients in the role of like, teach me everything about your culture.
Yes. Yeah.
It's such a tricky balance to
Yeah.
have.
So is how do we invite curiosity so that I get to learn from you about you since you're the expert, but not put it on you for you to teach me. So what I tell supervisees all the time is that the same way that you invest in going and learning about a subject or a model, I want you to be invested in learning about cultural humility. So, what is the population that you're working? What is it that we need to be reading? And if it's not out there, because it's not out there, unfortunately, right now, we still go through that lens of cultural humility through stereotypes versus learning about the human. So a lot of times is what books that we need to be reading outside the mental health so that we can learn about the stories about the population that I'm working with and how can I learn about this family culture or my client's family culture so that I get to um, learn from them and be curious about it. So slowing down, I love that you named this, slowing down the interpretation. So we go back to, am I pathologizing this behavior? Or is this part of the family culture? Not from a stereotype lens, but from like, what is it about this family culture? And there's many things that we don't intend to project, but unfortunately, because we have one lens, we tend to look everything through there. So the idea is an invitation of, can I invite you to dance with the client? So what steps are we doing back and forth in order to be curious about what is it about this behavior that makes sense, either as a surviving skill, as an adaptation in your family, and how this surviving skill is now not working for the client who I'm working with. So asking yourself these questions quite often, it will allow different meaning to emerge for you.
Sorry.
So it's a lot for all of you who are watching this video. Anytime that we go and we go to a system to learn about mental health, it doesn't matter if it's a play therapist, whatever you decide to do, we are trained to look at patterns. We are trained to interpret and to project. So these are good skills to have that they're going to help you for treatment planning, for case notes, for supervision. But the invitation through cultural humility is, and can we be curious? Can there be other meaning? Um, can we be open about what is it? So, for example, in play therapy, if a child picks the color red, And now we're interpreting like the child is angry all the time because we remember inside out and anger, or because we took trainings that say this is this equals this. But what if the child only had access to that color and they're attached to that color because it's comfort? Like I may not know that unless I ask that question. Right. So a lot of the times when they are in camps, like in my population, if they were detained and sent to a camp, they may not have access to all the crayons. So I learned that the hard way.
Like, oh, yeah, just
So I have to be curious, like, oh, I noticed that you really, really like this color. Do you really, really like this color? Or what does this color mean to you? There is a
yeah,
difference invitation before I go into, oh my God, it was so angry because like it's the red and what the red means. So interpreting, we're so quick to interpret it because we were taught to think that way, but it may have different meanings.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's all those many years ago. I mean, that's why I developed my many colors of me for that because like, it's just the funniest thing, right? When we're like, we
Yeah.
pathologize like crayon colors, like, what are we doing here? Right? Like, and being able to allow the client's story to like be their story
Yeah.
and to show up in the way that they need it and want it and can allow for it to show up in doses of vulnerability that are manageable
Yeah.
and containable.
Yeah. Yeah. So, um, uh, depending on the model they are using, at the end of the day, what we want is how do we welcome clients from a cultural lens? How are we going to divide the working time? Are we doing um, directed play, non-directed play? Like, what is it that we're doing? How are we closing that play so that we can move to grounding? And then we lead the child out. So we have to think about structure in a different way. And all of it because we want to honor the child and allow for regulation throughout, not just in processing, paying attention to things, um, in order to help the child be able to function after they leave the session, which is something that a lot of times we don't think about. We just like, today was hard. We're like, great. And what are we doing before we send them out? So there's all these things
Yeah.
that we have to think about. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying I really like how you kind of gave that like just the play session some structure of like some things to be mindful about of it's not just playing, right? The just playing that we always talk about, but it's being really mindful about are we staying attuned? Are we staying within attunement, reflection, nurture, and co-regulation?
Yeah.
And if we kind of have these key concepts like in our forefront of our brain of like whatever activity it is or whatever play is coming through, our objective is attunement, attunement, attunement. And
Yeah.
this is how we can help maintain that regulation and that grounding throughout the session too.
Yeah.
Um, as we're talking about the playroom, do you have thoughts? I know you have many thoughts and tips about how can we create culturally safe play spaces? I mean, this is a group of incredible graduate students who are brand new to the field and launching into their next professional chapter. I mean, it's the most exciting time. And thinking about there's so many different placement options. There's so many different internship settings. You don't have any control as the intern of what that looks like.
Yeah.
But kind of how can we create culturally safe spaces
Yeah.
in the playroom?
So I think it's a depends, right?
Mhm.
So most of the trainings, unfortunately, are focusing on private practice. So for all of you are gonna have to, when you go to trainings, my invitation is start thinking about how will this apply to the setting that you have access to or that you may go to. So for example, when I started many, many months ago, I'm not gonna say how many months, I started actually providing home services. Um, If you have the opportunity, I'll say take it. There's a lot of fear about it, but you learn so much from working on people's home. So I used to have a carry-on.
Mhm.
And in that carry-on, I thought, my thought process was, what was the most important toys that I need to have here that a child universally can pick up? So I had a baby doll. I removed the clothing. So it has like a white cloth, I think, at the beginning. And I'm going to say yes, because I just donated some of my toys, and that first doll actually just left to someone who's starting their practice.
Oh, wait, that's
Uh, so I was so excited for her. But I removed like no pink, no blue, like gender neutral. Then like I look for a couple of toys that represent food. And I was thinking, what is the most universal things that I can have there? I have learned from other mentors who told me if you don't have it, draw it. Like what is it that they need to have here? But because I had to carry that bag, I wanted to make sure that I have some things like colors, paper, but it was not too heavy that it was going to be a workout every single time that I had to go from house to house and put in the car and get in and out. Then I moved to provide home services in school settings. So in school settings, it was completely different. So they ask you to go in to work on some issues, but the reality is that you're working on regulation because they come in dysregulated, and the teachers or the adults have this fantasy that when the child leaves your room, they're going to be so regulated and able to integrate all this information. So then I realized really quick that I needed a lot of regulation, access to regulation toys or interventions to help these kiddos come in, get grounded, get regulated, and then send them out. And in school settings, you actually do not have an hour. You will have a lot of interruptions. So just get ready because you have to make a lot of adaptations to whatever intervention you do. And in both of them, your treatment plan, it's not this detail like we're going to have 5 items that we're going to be working on. Like you take one item and then the toy that you gravitate most, but try to be neutral. Now in my office, because I specifically work with migrants and that's on my website, that's what I'm known for. I tend to ask kids when they come in, depending on where they're from, like what is the toy that I need to learn that you miss the most? So now, sometimes it's eBay, sometimes it's Amazon, sometimes it's, but I go and look for board games that for them meant connection and
love that.
from an attachment lens, right? So that's what I try to have. Um, so I will say do not overthink it. Do not try to have one of a kind or one of each, or kids actually they want someone to see them. The kids want to know that they matter. They want to feel special when they're with you. They want to feel safe. Their nervous system wants to feel safe. And for that, you actually don't need a lot of toys. So, some kind of colors, either crayons or pencils or markers. Be aware if you take markers, because that's going to end up in a lot of your things. Paper. I went to the dollar store to get paper from there, just so you know. Don't buy fancy stuff.
Yep.
Um, and then some basics that depending on the population that you'll be working, are you going to be working with foster care kids? So then that requires a specific toys for you to have, like a house will be helpful. Um, Miniatures of families will be helpful. If you're going to be working with medical trauma, you may need a specific. So start thinking of like what is it you're being attracted, because that specialization will require different items from you. When we get out of school, we think we can treat everything. And man, I wish that would be true. Um, you might be able to tiptoe, but that doesn't mean that will be like your niche. So the invitation is actually start thinking about what will be the population that you want to be learning about every day that gets you excited. And then depending on that, we'll decide what is it that you need in the room. So if you went right now to my playroom, you're going to see not only immigration, but a lot of medical trauma, because those are the clients that I'm attracting right now. We'll go in another day of why. But because of that, I have dolls that have zippers so that you can open. I have tubes. I have ambulances. Like I have all these things for the kids that I'm working with because of medical trauma. And then for, like I said, for migration, I have a lot of board games that I will never learn about until now because of the kids that I work with. And I tend to work with kids from Latin America. So think about all the countries. It's not just Mexico, all the countries from Latin America. So I tend to have now lots of board games from different countries. So I'm having fun right now with what I'm learning from them. You don't have to buy toys. I'm in private practice. I have access. I have privileges. So I get to buy quite a bit of board games right now.
I love that you just approach this of through that lens of like, what do you miss the most? What do we need to have here? And and I think that that also helps to give the child some ownership. Like this can be my safe place. Like
Yeah.
this can be like just a piece of home.
Yeah.
In these last few minutes, what are what would be your favorite book suggestions for our new play therapists? Because you and I both love books and you actually read them, and I have my stack of them that I mean to read. But what do you think would be some ending resources that we could leave with the class in this?
Uh, I was like, oh my God,
I know.
Claire.
And just so
Um,
you guys know, if you follow Liliana online, she has a book club where they're always reading like the most fascinating good books.
those are
So
never my choices. Yeah, so everyone, if you follow me, yes, you know someone else, because they're all my colleagues are trying to introduce me to nonfiction because I that's not what I read. Um,
mm,
so unfortunately, someone just make me aware that I work really hard even on the nonfiction because I'm trying to like, how will I use this in the play therapy room or the therapy room? So I ruin book club because I'm always thinking of how will I use this in the work. I will say Terry Cutman doing play therapy, her book, so that you can get an intro into all the play therapy models. So most of us tend to think about play therapy as one, and therapy is the umbrella. Play therapy is the umbrella. And then we have so many play therapy models. So I would say, please read that one. That's really, really good. And then depending on if you want to focus on interventions or specific models, then I will say whatever you pick is going to be amazing. If you want to think outside the box, honestly, Claire just share with you that I have social media. I tend to share with all of you what I read and how it might be helpful. You can follow me too. Um, don't stalk me, like follow me, okay? Like this, that's kind of creepy now. But because there's so many, and then that way I will be able to tell you to like read that anything that you can read about family play therapy. So Claire's book, Anna Gomez has amazing books in regards to sand play or sand tray and EMDR, but she has a family system lens. So that is really, really helpful. They're really thick. That I have done that face with her. I was like, girl, can you not have like that thick book? Um, Harris books are amazing. Robert Grant books is amazing. I mean, all of you have like, there's like amazing books. So it all depends. Also, please know, like I'm in a phase in my life where my kids are young men. Most of the time about myself. So therefore, I in my pleasure is reading. My coping mechanism is reading. The way that I escape and I numb is reading. So I love reading. So I'm able to read quite a bit of books. Do not try to imitate me. Do not create a fantasy about me because I read a lot. Um, I'm by myself, so I read.
Thank you so much for your time and
Oh,
for your suggestions.
of course. Please, if anything from this chat, um, be curious about the family culture. Be curious about the caretakers. Take the time to get to know the family system. Understand the hierarchy of the family, who needs to be in the playroom. If the caretakers do not know how to play, grief work must be a part of it. And do not go against caretakers. If they tell you the child has to clean up, we start by cleaning up. And then slowly we can be doing something completely different, so that the child is not set up to be punished, or to be surveillance when they go home. If kids, they may appear not to engage, or be compliant, or they freeze or just do solitary play, be curious about their nervous system response and what is that they are surviving. And honestly, as Claire mentioned early, sometimes our roles are to follow, sometimes we structure more clearly, sometimes our job is to slow down to create safety. We tend to be predictable, so that safety is there. But all the time have zoom out so you can have a lens not only of culture but a social justice, so that every time you're very mindful of how all of these issues might be impacting the client, and it's not organized yet for them to tell you, I had a shitty week because my parents, were taken, or because we have to move again, or whatever it is. So therefore, we get to organize and name so that the kids are not carrying these heavy things all the time, and we don't get to reenact some of the harm that they have carry, because of what is happening, outside our playroom.
Yeah. I love that. And those are, I think, good thoughts to end on. And I hope, each of us can kind of just sit and marinate in that for a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, the lives of so many children are
Yeah.
not peaches and roses. That is for sure.
So please take care, and thank you for inviting me. And please, all of you, take care. And remember, whatever we're working on, grief is right behind.
Always. Thank you so much, Liliana.
You're
And
welcome.
I'll see you soon.